So with this whole Aquaman 2 thing, as reported by Variety, as reported by so many different outlets that are looking at the projections and considering how much money that they're spending, considering definitely, I guess, the comparison to their previous projects, kind of similar to the Marvels. You're talking about billion-dollar films. As it says right here, Jason Momoa's Aquaman sequel is expected to float atop the charts in North America over these other newcomers. But the Warner Bros. Comic installment faces choppy waters. It's targeting a soft 34 to 40 million in its 4-day debut, including Monday's Christmas Day, which can make it the latest catastrophe, is what they call it, in a terrible year for superhero movies. So despite it being on top, I think that speaks to just Hollywood and box offices and how they're looking in general. It's that, yeah, it may be top of the charts, but in context, it's not going to be good. So Aquaman says, for example, Aquaman's collected a unspectacular 67 million start, but powered to a mighty 335 million in North America. And of course, it got 1.15 billion globally. But it says, however, the $205 million, which means they spent more than that, way more than that if you include marketing, budgeted sequel arrives at a time that's been unforgiving for many stories about the spandex heroes. Obviously, you have these other projects that have all flopped. He says already 3. This is amazing. So you have 3 movies to debut this year that were flops. Flash was a flop. Fury of the Gods, Shazam was a flop. Blue Beetle have all flops. So this is going to be the 4th flop this year for DC and Warner alone, which is unbelievable to me that they're able to do this and continue to produce that. So as they acknowledge, they said they scaled back on marketing efforts, which likely still cost $100 million. That's a lot. What are you scared? If you spend $205 million and you spend $100 million, that's about what we're expecting you to spend. So I don't know what you're talking about scale back. But nonetheless, this movie at its trajectory, and I will say this, I always say this before we get to because you got to leave some sort of room for opening here. Let's consider this. If, like the first one, I don't know, people watch it, and some of the earlier reviews aren't necessarily saying this, but people watch it, it has great word of mouth, and yeah, that can potentially happen, I guess. Great word of mouth, and it just does incredibly well. Because of that, it accelerates, and then it becomes a successful film. I know you have to at least say that even if it's a 0.001% chance, it can happen, okay? All the projections don't show that, but let's just say it can happen. But if it does not happen, then yes, you're talking about yet another flop. And look, it is in the superhero realm. People are talking about this fatigue thing. Again, I think we may be saying different things and defining it in different ways. Here's what I think. There are simultaneously 2 issues happening. You have one in comics, and you have another in Hollywood. Both of them have problems. I think that the Barbies and the Oppenheimers of the world are outliers, and they're not the norm. I think this is more so the norm for what's being produced. Comic book film and films in general have to start reining in their budgets, but do they have the capacity to even change that aspect of it all? I don't know if it's funny money. I'm not going to just say that it's funny money. I just don't really know where all the money's going. And I guess it's not for me to know. But they're going to have to figure out how to rein in these budgets for sure, because they're spending a lot, which means they have to make a lot, and they're not able to do that. I don't think that's realistic. And I think that for a lot of people in the properties it is that they love, and people know me. I remember doing my videos about Aquaman. Look, y'all know I'm a comic book guy, man. I'm a comic guy. This is what I like to do. And I walked away from that, from the mainstream stuff, and I'm doing my own thing with my own company these days, so I'm not as invested. But I don't think the enthusiasm being back injected in either film as well as in comic books, is going to happen from the shot callers and the mainstream guys. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that's realistic. I think that if there is to be a renaissance of sorts and sort of revitalizing of either of those industries, it's going to happen alternatively. I just think going to happen. I don't think and again, that they have their own questions that they have to answer, and they have to find solutions for as well. Because how do you sustain yourself if you're like your primary source of income, or how you operate as a business is filmmaking, making TV shows, but those are becoming less and less profitable? What does your model look like going into the future? I don't know. But I do think that people do need to give up on this pipe dream that, hey, the people that are in charge of the properties that you may know and love and cherish and respect and admire and all that, whatever, and the people that now have control of them are multi-billion-dollar corporate multinational entities. I think you need to give it up that they're going to change. And I mentioned this on Open Bar yesterday. I think the best case scenario is that it gets ran into the ground. They sell off the assets to someone else that actually cares about those properties individually. And I'm not talking about like just a transfer of hands. I mean individually with these properties. I think a person, let's say, that's going to own a Marvel or a DC needs to be their focus as they have it, and they need to care about it. That's your best case scenario, though. It becomes cheap enough for just a person that actually cares about it to get control of it. But I don't think that that's ever going to happen. I don't think you should be holding your breath that even something like that's going to happen. I just think that you should be thinking bigger. Think, well, that stuff exists. The books that you have exist, the movies that you have exist, and back in the past that are associated with these properties. You got them. They're not going anywhere. And you can still like them and enjoy them for what they were. But now it's time for something different. It'll be newer properties. It will be a different model in terms of economically how these things are going to be produced. And I think that's just the reality is going to need to set in for everybody. So whether you are a part of the mainstream or you are a customer of the mainstream material, I think that's a reality that you're going to need to face. I'm not going to say these guys are just going to be phased out tomorrow. That's not the claim it is that I'm making. I do think that they're going to have to fundamentally change if they are to exist, especially those that aren't like a Disney that has parks. And even those are starting to be a little questionable for them to be able to subsidize everything it is that they do. For those that exist primarily as film and content production in that aspect, they got to make an adjustment. And I don't think just changing the content's going to be good enough. I just don't. Not if it's going to remain profitable. And on this note, I just thought it was very interesting. And look, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some corporate lawyer and I know all the ins and outs, because I don't. I'll be the first to say that I'm ignorant on that. But I don't know if you guys heard, there was buzz. And again, it could just be rumors. But potentially Paramount and Warner would merge. And both of those companies are, they got debt, and a lot of it. So I don't know, again, I said this on Open Bar, if it's going to just become a Megatron of debt or the Voltron of debt, that's the whole point here. But okay, I guess these guys got to change. And we'll see what happens. But to everybody out there that's a customer, I think you maybe should be considering replacements. There's a lot of people that are very competitive in the alternative realm that are producing film, that are making comic books. Maybe give those guys a shot, and it'll satisfy your itch. There's a lot of guys doing great things out there. Alpha Core #1's pre-order is live. Written by the legendary Chuck Dixon and penciled by Joe Bennett. Visit Rippaverse.com to grab a copy and any of the merchandise items. Be sure to also check out the animated trailer for the campaign, which is the latest project from Rippaverse Studios. Y'all be easy.